How's it going, everybody? Brian Alvarez and Dave Meltzer here, Wrestling Observer Radio. It is September 13, 2016, figure4online.com/wrestlingobserver.com. We got Raw to talk about, Clash of Champions, a lot of news. But first off, the announcement today, I guess announcement is the right word, the payoffs for UFC are in. CM Punk, $500,000 in base pay. A lot of people up in arms about this one, Dave.
I have no idea why. I mean, seriously, at this stage of the game, you know what I mean? It's like that's the entertainment world, and that's the sports world. You know, when you're a drawing card, you get paid based on what you can draw, and $500,000 was an incredible bargain for him. He probably, I mean, it's too soon to know the exact numbers, but he very conservatively drew 10 times that amount, and I'm sure he'll make a lot more than $500,000 with pay-per-view points anyway. I mean, as a fighter, I mean, you're not paid based on your worth as a fighter. If you were, Demetrius Johnson would probably be one of the 2 or 3 highest paid guys in the company, and he's not. You're paid, as far as how good you are to a degree when you're not a draw, it probably does affect your pay to a degree, but there's a lot of factors that go into it. But when it comes to needle movers are paid by how much they move the needle, and they perceived that he would move the needle, and whether they got a bargain in him. He drew a lot more money than he cost, and that's the goal. So especially now with the people who are running the company now. I mean, there's so many things done to increase profits right now. So when you get a guy who gives you profits, that's a successful thing. Now, is that enough that it's going to save him for another fight? And should he fight again? That's a completely different issue. But I mean, I'd be shocked. I'm surprised that anyone's surprised. I'm surprised anyone's surprised. I mean, when it comes to base pay, he was the 3rd highest on the show, and there's no doubt that he drew more on the show than anybody else. And by a significant margin. I mean, if you're going to complain, you probably should complain about Overeem getting $800,000 base because, and Overeem probably was worth $800,000 when it comes to the full revenue of the show as well. So, I mean, I wouldn't complain about that either. But Punk was, the one who drew the crowd. He was the one. I mean, anything that they did way over 270,000. I mean, I don't know the number. It's too early to say the number. But there's enough stuff in here where we know that the number's way above that, and that's
But the
it.
rumors of 700,000 are likely high.
Very high. There's nothing that I've heard that would have a number close to that. No, but it's still it's still going to be most likely. Again, it's early. We're talking about a show that was 2 days ago, so there's like almost no real numbers in. There's internet pay-per-view numbers that UFC knows, so it's probably going to be the 4th highest of the year, which, by distant 4th, because there were 3 monster shows this year, which were the 2 Conor McGregor shows in UFC 200, and it's nowhere close to that. And then you've got the rest of the shows that did 250 to maybe 4, the John Jones, and this probably beat all of those. It's not 100% that it did, but it probably did. So, should he fight again? That's up to him. He's going to decide if he wants to fight again. If he wants to fight again with the numbers that he drew, here's the thing. Alberto Del Rio was being offered money like this. He didn't take it, but he was offered it, And he wouldn't have drawn like Punk did, I don't think, had he fought. So it's not, that's, I don't know. I'm not surprised with some people with a reaction, but I am surprised with others in the sense that what the business is. And it's a business. It's not a meritocracy. It's never been. It never will be. It's a fight sport. And the fault is not the people who run the company. The fault is the fans. If you want to put blame, the blame is on the fans. If the fans, believe me, there is no, I don't say there's no promoter, this would not be true. But I know Joe Silva well enough, okay? And I know Dana White enough to know that if they could make more money putting the two best fighters against each other and only the best fighters against each other, and they could make the most money possible doing it, they would love to do it. The reason they don't do it is because that doesn't work. And every time this subject comes up and people complain about it, it's like it doesn't work. If it did work, they would do that. And when it stops working, people go, in the long run, this isn't good. Well, in the long run, when we see a change in the pendulum, when the pendulum starts showing that, hey, these fights between two top fighters, when Demetrius Johnson against somebody or other, all of a sudden start doing big business, and the freak show fights on Bellator or in UFC don't do as well, you will see them promoting exactly to what the fans want. They'll learn. Or they'll be out of touch with the fans. That can happen too. We've seen that in other businesses. But right now, if you got to look at what the fans want, because it's a business run by the fans. I mean, the fans are the ones ultimately who direct they're in charge of the direction, more than and this is the direction they choose. I mean, I don't like it. I just as soon see the best fights. People think that, I'm all into freak show fights and this and this. I'm into saving companies. I don't want to see companies go out of business and or lose lots of money. And the reality is this guy driving all that revenue to the company. Does that mean that other fighters are going to do better because of it? In theory, yes. In practicality, especially right now, probably no. But Stipe Miocic and perhaps Overeem. I don't know if Overeem got a cut, but frickin' Stipe Miocic. I mean, I'm sure he's really happy that Punk was on this show because he got a cut based on Punk being there. It's in a sense, the other guys on the show, it really didn't matter to them because they're going to be paid the same either way. So it's not like it's like benefit to the whole show. You could argue perhaps that some of the guys on the card were seen by more people, and they were, because of him. So, it helps them a little bit, but, that's minor, honestly.
So the big news, well, there's a lot of news in wrestling, but one of the big stories today was the WWE acknowledging that Vince McMahon, quote, sustained an injury while training requiring surgery, and he will be back in the office at WWE headquarters on Wednesday, as usual, the statement noted.
Yeah, sure. I mean,
you don't believe he's going to be there Wednesday?
Oh, he may in a wheelchair. Look, he tore his quad doing squats. I mean, they're downplaying it. I mean, he wasn't at TV. I don't think that you're gonna. The last time he tore his quad, he wasn't around that quick. I mean, I think it's. I mean, will he be in the office in a wheelchair? Possibly for a while. I mean, but, maybe. I mean, I'm sure. He probably doesn't want to sit around and do nothing. But after surgery to reattach your quad, I'm not so sure he's going to be at the office so quick. I think that may be. I think that they may be fibbing a little there.
So we got Vince McMahon, who is 71 years old, doing heavy squats and tearing his quad.
No, I don't know that it was heavy.
Well, for Vince McMahon, I'm sure it was heavy. This man doesn't go light. Give me a break.
No, he does go light. Have you seen him train? He doesn't. He's not training. He's not training that heavy. I mean, he's training. I mean, believe me, it's heavy for a 71-year-old guy, but he's not training he's not training heavy for like what a weightlifter would say is heavy. I don't think.
Heavy is relative.
Well, it's a relative term. I mean, it was probably it probably was somewhat heavy, but again, I mean, it's not like if you're talking to a power
He's not
lifter,
squatting what Big E is squatting. How about that?
I sure hope not. Oh, I don't know. Who knows if Big E's squatting heavy now? He's not squatting what Big E was squatting when Big E was competing. That's for sure.
All right. Anyway, the point of all of this is here's a 71-year-old man who's squatting enough that he tore his quad. And meanwhile, we learned today that 39-year-old Alberto Del Rio tried to get an exemption for testosterone replacement therapy. He's on it.
No. Brian, you know the story. I mean,
That's what he said.
Okay.
Who am I to say that Alberto Del Rio is telling a lie here?
Okay. This is one that everyone's going to get mad at. All right, so here's the deal. But I'm steering you in as much a direction as I can tell you. I know too much that's not on the record on this stuff. Okay, he failed the test for the TE on the TE ratio, so that's true. The rest of it, I mean, he failed a steroid test. That's what happened. As far as like everyone's got an excuse when they fail a steroid test. You know that. I mean, it's always medically prescribed. At least he didn't say it was a supplement, but so that's what he said. I mean, as far as what it really is, it's what it's. I can't say any more, but it's what it's. He failed.
Why did he bother
PEDs.
saying anything? I mean, they didn't announce anything. They only announced that he failed. Could have been anything. Why did he bother saying anything?
Why does anyone bother saying anything? Everyone that's failed has tried to say something, especially if they're leaving or if they're mad. I mean, you heard Eva Marie. You heard what Eva Marie's husband or Eva Marie said. Whether it's true or not, we don't know. You heard what what's his name, Adam Rose said, which is probably with Adam Rose's case. I'm sure the substance is true. You always, I mean, Roman Reigns didn't say anything because he's with the company. He didn't want to get, he didn't want to get in any more trouble than he already was. But I mean, for people who are leaving, they're gonna say something. Rey Mysterio said stuff. That's what you do. That's what you do. You try to there's that lingering question, and you try to give an answer. And medically prescribed testosterone replacement therapy is something that people probably see in television commercials. And it's probably something that he figures if he says it, then that's, then people, it's for Mexico. I mean, in Mexico, the fact is that there's stuff like that. It's not that hard to get. It doesn't have the stigma that it would have here. So he was saying it for the Mexican press. So it was a good, that's what it was. But I mean, it's not, he failed a test for testosterone. He failed a test for elevated testosterone in his system. I mean, that's the truth. And, whatever, he doesn't have to worry about it anymore because he's not going to sign with anybody that's testing. I don't think. He says he's not signing with anyone. I mean, the only place he might sign would be TNA. And they would have to, the problem with TNA, as everyone knows, is the financial situation. If TNA had better finances and they were in a position to, do it, I mean, and they'll probably make him some kind of an offer anyway, and they want him bad. And, but they're not, whether TNA is or isn't drug testing, and TNA has, in fact, drug tested, but they don't suspend people. They just kind of like say, hey, you failed. And I don't even think they fine people, but they, I know that they do test, and I know that people have been told that they failed, but I never heard anyone being suspended. So they just kind of do it. But, unless he's going there, he's not going anywhere where he's going to be tested. He's not going to, they're not going to test him in anywhere because he's probably going to freelance, and he's not looking at doing, a full schedule or anything like that. He's talking about 60 dates a year and phasing himself out of wrestling in a couple of years. And where, how it all happens. I mean, he's going to take offers. I mean, there's a lot of politics in play because, I mean, the thing with him is that, his best market is either going to be Mexico or something like a Lucha Underground or American shows aimed at Hispanics type of a thing, which is a unique, it's kind of like a unique thing, but he's got a big enough name that, he can go anywhere. And everyone in the business, I believe, of any significance has at least inquired about him. Whether they'll meet his price, don't know. But
well, listen, here's my other question. In this interview where he's talking about his testosterone replacement therapy or whatever, was he trying to be friendly? Was he being a dick, or was he just being stupid when he threw Andrade Cien Almas under the bus, talking about how he's unhappy and would love to go back to Mexico?
Yeah, that's a hard one. I'm sure I would think that that's true because everything it's consistent with everything I've heard as well, especially when he went back. But yeah, it throws him under the bus. And it's I mean, I think that the key thing he said was that Sombra asked him, do things get better when you're on when you get out of NXT and you're on the main roster? And he goes, no, they get worse. And he just said he gave him advice to study English because it's very important to them that you know English. They'll kind of hold it against you if you don't. And he's been studying English, but he's frustrated. Look, you go from being main event and in front of thousands of people every week, and then you're in NXT in front of 200 people and you're not getting over, and they're trying to change your style, and you get all confused because you have stuff that you do that works that they tell you not to do. And then you have an audience that doesn't know who you are. And, there's all kinds of, it's a tough transition. It's like the Japanese to American style transition isn't that tough because the Japanese style is similar. And in many ways it's more like, how do I word it? It's like if you wrestle in Japan today and then go to WWE, it's almost like you have an advantage because it's I don't know what you want to say. It's harder in Japan, so you get better because it's harder because it's a tougher audience to get emotion out of. But when you do, you really get it. So maybe those people learn more. All I know is that the guys that came directly from Japan, with the exception of Hideo Itami, and his problem has been more injuries, I think, than anything else. But if you look at like Nakamura and AJ and a lot of these guys, even Asuka and everyone, I mean, they're getting over doing essentially Japanese style and toning down Japanese style because, and they're getting over doing that. Whereas like the Lucha guys that come in, I mean, none of the Lucha guys that come in have gotten over based on their work because of the different style. Metalik will be very interesting because he's fantastic, and he certainly got over in Full Sail, in his matches so far. But the problem is that once he becomes a regular on Raw, I don't think they're going to want him doing what he's been doing to get over. And then when they try to reprogram him, and he may do all right just because he spent a year in Japan, and so he can, and that's a solid style. So he knows how to do that style, to a degree. He'll still have the language problem. But, Sombra shouldn't have been that hard too, because Sombra did work New Japan, but he's struggling. He's struggling. And you go from being, like I said, you go from being a top guy, in the hot group to struggling and not getting over. You're going to start doubting yourself and asking questions. And that happened to all the WCW guys, some of whom were actually doing really well, and they were just victims of the fact that they were Mexican. And I remember watching those guys come in and be great workers and then get worse and worse and worse because they just kept losing their confidence. And that's a big part of the deal. When you're on top and you're a main eventer and the crowd's reacting to everything that you do, you get real confident. And when you go and when you're out there and you're not getting a reaction and you're not getting over, you start second guessing everything that you do, and it can be depressing, and it can kills your confidence.
Anything new on Randy Orton?
Yeah, so Randy Orton worked tonight in Fairfax, Virginia. He took no bumps, other than he did do the RKO for the finish again. So that's really interesting in the sense that he took no punches. He, didn't do anything. He worked John Cena. It was a tag team match. It was John Cena and Randy Orton against Eric Rowan and Bray Wyatt. And John worked almost the entire match. Randy came in for the finish, basically one or two offensive moves and the RKO, and that was it, which is really weird because, the rule, it's like, that's just really weird.
Again, are we sure that this is a concussion issue?
Yeah. That's why he wasn't cleared last night.
All right.
Yeah.
There's a lifetime gig coming out of this if this is a concussion issue.
Oh, but that already happened. That already happened once the Lesnar thing happened. Yeah. Him and the other guy, him and Tyson Kidd, have lifetime gigs, unless something happens,
No,
because
even if something happens, these are lifetime gigs. Something happens is even worse.
Well, there could be other things that happen. But yeah, for the most part,
it's mind-blowing to me.
no, everyone's talking about that now in the sense of, with hindsight and everything like that. What a disaster this whole thing turned out to be. And for what? I mean, that's the other thing is like, it's not even...
Yeah, for what? Because I want to mention one thing. You talked about this last night. I got to bring this up. You talked about how they did this finish and they got everybody talking and thinking that it was out of control or whatever. I mean, did that really happen? Because when the show was over, everybody knew what it was. Nobody thought that Lesnar shot on him. Nobody.
No, there were real newspapers that covered it.
I know, but I'm
Lesnar
talking as far as wrestling fans. I mean, who cares about real newspapers? I mean,
that's what they were looking. They're not looking for the hardcore wrestling fans. They're looking to get publicity. I mean, and it did. And there were a lot of people who were, when it was over, were like, "What did we just see?"
Yeah, but 24 hours later, they knew what they just saw. Am I wrong? Is there a large contingent of fans out there that think that Brock Lesnar shot on Randy Orton and destroyed him? I find that hard to believe.
I don't think so now, but for 48 hours, yes, for sure.
So they did this for 48 hours of talk.
Yeah. Well, I mean, maybe it would have been longer if the whole thing with Jericho hadn't happened and Vince hadn't have said, and all that, and it pretty much came out that it is what it is. Although, I mean, yeah, it was pretty obvious by Tuesday. I mean, when they start using it for an angle, you kind of know, but there's no follow up. I mean, that's the weirdest thing of the whole thing. It's like
this deserves its own book. It's just
no. This is just it's amazing that this one's really amazing on the WWE part, just because, with what we all know about concussions and with that lawsuit out and with how protective they've been, it's just everything that has to do with, and everything that has to do with this one, it's so weird, because it's like, it's just weird.
All right, let's talk about this Raw show here tonight. Low praise, but this was way better than last week. We did not have 5 straight segments of horrible programming this week.
No, we had no half hour anywhere close to last week, and we had a very good main event. But I don't know that I would. I don't know. It was just kind of like a show to me until the last match. It was okay. The last match was a lot of fun. And, everything's kind of predictable. It all adds up. So Roman Reigns is not going to be in the championship match. He's going to face Rusev on the next pay-per-view. And so it'll be Seth Rollins and Kevin Owens. And Jericho is going to work with Sami Zayn. And then we got the same tag team title match that seems like we've had forever. And we even had that tonight again. The same New Day versus Anderson and Gallows match. And what else we got? And Charlotte is going to be with Sasha Banks. So the deal with Charlotte and Sasha Banks, so like last week, in midweek, I think around Wednesday, they told everyone in the company no mentions of Charlotte and Sasha Banks. And the reason was even though they announced Charlotte and Sasha Banks would be in the match on Raw Monday, as you could see by the show, they changed it. And I guess that was when the idea was that we're going to do a 3-way, and the winner was going to get the shot. The winner of the 3-way would get the shot with. Why did they put Dana Brooke in that match? That's another issue. But so when they did that, they had to erase what they've already said. But now we're back, and it in fact is going to be Charlotte and Sasha Banks without Bayley and not in a 3-way, unless next week they change it. Given that it was a double pin, but nobody said it was a double pin, which was the weirdest thing of all, because it was such a clear double pin, and I thought that they would go in there and just go, well, it's controversial. Well, maybe we need another match. Well, maybe we're going to make a 3-way. But they acted like nothing happened. It was just a clean pin. So did Sasha not get her shoulder up or something?
Well, let's start here at the beginning because there's much to say. Mick Foley's in the ring to kick off the show, and he talks about the SmackDown Women's Champion. We got a new one, obviously, and he says the real women are here on Raw. So he calls out Charlotte.
Well, he put over Becky Lynch, though.
Yeah, she's his friend. He puts over all the women. But the real women, he says, are here on
the
Raw.
top women, yeah.
So out comes Charlotte, and she says that she believes an apology is in order. And Dana says, Charlotte, you don't have to apologize to me. And Charlotte says, I would never apologize to you. You owe me an apology. The second worst storyline of all time continues here. Which, by the way, we had no Titus O'Neil and Darren Young, so I congratulate them for that.
Yeah, they were on Superstars this
God.
week.
So she says Dana needs to apologize or that her apprenticeship is over.
So instead of them, we got Jinder Mahal. I don't know that was an upgrade.
It was an upgrade, trust me. So Foley
I don't know about that.
Foley is done with this. And he says, we got to talk about this title. So out comes Sasha. Says she's going to take the title back at Clash of Champions. There's a long pause before somebody remembers to hit Bayley's music. She comes out, and in a very sheepish manner, she shyly says that she beat Charlotte last week and she should get a title shot. Sasha, in the most heelish manner possible, tells her that, I have no friends when it comes to this title, you need to go to the end of the line. And Charlotte shouted down Dana after Dana suggested a best of 7 between the other two. And
Which
finally,
I thought that was hilarious.
Well, sure, it makes sense. She's trying to save Charlotte, but Charlotte wants none of it.
Yeah, no, but I mean, that was like really weird because it was like the whole idea of best of 7 means that they're fighting each other forever, and Charlotte's going to be champion while they beat each other up, and Charlotte shouted it down when it should be like, that's a brilliant idea.
Well, I think the idea is that we're supposed to feel sympathy for Dana.
Well, I know that's
she's always got good ideas, but Charlotte shoots them down. The problem is there anyone who has any sympathy for Dana?
The problem is like Dana Brooke is not at this stage of the game meant to be a very successful babyface on this roster. I mean, they're going to do everything they can to get her there. Don't get me wrong. I mean, you can see it, plain as day. It's always been the plan, that she's going to be this big babyface superstar. But man, I mean, it's like, I don't see it. I don't know. I mean, I know they love her, but I mean, I don't see it.
So Mick signed Sasha versus Bayley with the winner getting a title shot. And then Dana just slaps Charlotte. And so Foley, out of nowhere, adds her to the three-way. So now Dana has the opportunity to maybe face Charlotte at the pay-per-view. So
but why, that sort of word didn't make sense anyway.
It didn't make any sense.
And
but
worse,
I can explain to you, I think, why Dana was in this match. I think it's very clear.
So I can explain too. So they don't have a great match.
Well, exactly. They want to hold off Bayley versus Sasha in a singles match, probably for Mania. And so they threw Dana in here to work the entire match.
And make it suck.
We didn't get the good match. Yeah.
Couldn't they have put like somebody else in there?
They could have.
Who would have only taken it down like 1 notch instead of 2?
But then we wouldn't have Dana involved with this storyline. So they had a match, and it was, I don't know if I'd call it bad, but it certainly was not as good as a singles match would have been. Bayley's in there with Dana. Sasha's in there with Dana.
Dana wasn't good.
They're never in there with each other, except very, very rarely. We had the stacked up suplex spot. We had Sasha with the bank statement, but Bayley broke it up. And so finally, the finish, Bayley hits the belly to Bayley on Dana, but then Sasha leaps over the pile and gets the pin on Bayley with a rolling cradle. But, as noted, both girls had their shoulders down. Not one announcer noticed or made mention of this.
Well, I think that it's very clear they were told not to, because if it was just natural reaction, every one of them would have brought it up. So I think that there had to be a directive not to say it, which is either some weird thing that they're going to explain next week.
It
they don't
has
want
to
anyone,
be something they explain next week.
That we don't want anyone thinking, yeah, we had 3 hours to set that story up and we got nothing. Or she just screwed up.
Well, I guess we'll find out Monday. It seems impossible this could not be acknowledged, even if it was a screw-up. It was so obvious.
I know. That's why it was so weird that it was never mentioned. Because if it was late in the show, it's one thing, but when it's early in the show and Foley's out many times between then and you know what I mean, and doesn't mention it, and the announcers never mention it, and you don't show replays later in the show and say, by the way, this is what happened early in the show, it didn't feel like they were, it just didn't feel like they were setting it up, but I guess we'll know next week if they turn it into a 3-way.
We had a note that Cesaro had won the first match for himself in the best of 7 series at the O2. They had some footage of it. We had Dana trying to make up with Charlotte backstage, but Charlotte shouted her down and told her to get her bags. We had a goofy segment where the Shining Stars tried to sell timeshares to R-Truth, and Goldust dragged them away. And Shining Stars turn around, they run into Enzo and Cass. And the Shining Stars say, hey, we beat you last week fair and square. Enzo says, no, you pulled the tights. Challenge the Shining Stars. And we end up getting a singles match, which we'll talk about later. Had a Kevin Owens promo. Said he was going to prove that Roman did not belong in his ring ever. Says it was not going to be a triple threat match at Clash of Champions.
So there's this timeshare thing's like a big deal. They're making a big storyline out of it because it's now summer's over, but it's always summer in Puerto Rico, and those timeshares, like all the stars were there, and R-Truth was like, he was all excited and he was ready to put that credit card down.
I think it's been 2 weeks now that they've talked about how summer's over, and it's not. But I guess...
Well, in theory...
School's back in session, so summer, I guess, is over in WWE land.
In a lot of people, even though technically summer's still got like a little bit of time left, the feeling is that once Labor Day is over, summer's over.
So tell me, in pro wrestling, there's a worked summer.
Or they just don't know the seasons, and they just think that when the TV season starts, summer's over because that's what the world they live in.
We had Bo Dallas versus...
when it starts.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jericho first, by the way. He showed up, and Chris Jericho says, I was planning to have Kevin Owens on the highlight reel tonight, but Mick Foley pulled him out and put him in a match. They announced that match last week.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently they forgot their own booking. So anyway, it'll be Sami Zayn tonight on the highlight reel. We had Bo Dallas.
Okay. Anyway, go ahead, man.
Bo Dallas versus Brandon Scott.
Well, you didn't talk about like the Owens and the Owens interview where he talked about how
he said that Roman didn't belong in his ring,
and that Mick Foley was trying to stack the odds against him because Mick Foley is not on the same level as my mentor Triple H. So, yeah.
So Bo Dallas faced Brandon Scott. The fans chanted, "Let's go, Jobber." Bo Dallas won. My big question is, how long do you think it will take before they realize that, number one, he's not going to get over, and number two, he's really not going to get over with that sign?
Yeah, I just think it's the same thing as with Jinder Mahal. They're going to push him for a little while, and then he'll be back to where he was.
Okay, the highlight reel segment, this was actually pretty good. So, Sami Zayn comes out, and even though a couple of months ago we had the final Sami Zayn-Kevin Owens match until they did it again, this highlight reel is all about Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens until the very end.
Well, they made it clear that even though they're never going to fight again, they're going to fight again because Sami Zayn wants the Universal title and Kevin Owens is champion, so...
Well, he didn't exactly say that. He just said that one of these days he was going to win that title.
Well,
so,
if he's set on that title, he's got the guy's got to get through right now.
So Sammy tries to explain he's done with Owens, but he does want the title at some point. Says that, I will tell you one thing, Jericho. If you think that Kevin Owens is your friend or your brother, then you are a stupid idiot. And Jericho says you're just jealous. And Sammy says, where's the old Chris Jericho? It was guys like you and Dean Malenko and Eddie Guerrero, world travelers and journeymen, that motivated myself and Kevin Owens to travel the world for years. You're a 6-time world champion, but now you're nothing but Kevin Owens' bitch. So,
you know what's weird? Is the definition of journeyman...
I don't attribute that to a guy like Eddie Guerrero.
Journeyman is like a... like in sports, it's like a guy who's like on the team, who's like a not a star. It's like a journeyman player. You're there. You may have a decent length career, but you're not a star. Like a star, like it's and all of those guys. I mean, I guess you could say Dean Malenko was a journeyman wrestler, but you would never use that term for like an Eddie Guerrero or Chris Jericho.
I think that they were trying to say that these men journeyed all over the world.
That's a different thing.
But the term would not be journeyman.
No, the term would be world traveler.
Sure. Anyway, Jericho hit him with a cell phone, gave him a code breaker. They will be facing off at the pay-per-view, so that'll be a good match.
Should be.
Had Cesaro Sheamus in a best of 7. So Cesaro's selling his bad back, does all sorts of spots one way or the other. Springboard forearm, sharpshooter. Sheamus escapes, goes for the Celtic cross. And then Cesaro drops behind, rolls him up, puts his foot on the ropes, and wins. All of the announcers put over the cheating, saying, well, he has to do what he has to do to stay in the game. I thought, all these children, what a terrible lesson to tell these kids. You got to stay in the game. It's okay to cheat.
It's just fighting fire with fire. That's no biggie. But
3-2.
Yeah, they had a good match. I liked it. I thought especially the last couple minutes.
No biggie. You would never tell Cody, you got to do what you got to do sometimes, son. If you got to stay in the game, it's okay to cheat.
Yeah.
I know you'd never say that.
I wouldn't.
Terrible advice for the youngsters.
He wasn't giving advice for kids. He was trying to win the best of 5 series in a world with no morals, professional wrestling.
It's true. Well, there are no morals in this world. That's true.
Yeah.
Seth did a promo complaining that Roman Reigns getting a chance of getting a 3-way. He's the man, Roman isn't. He beats Roman every single time. He's telling all this to Foley. And Foley says, I don't want any distractions tonight. Actually, Seth doesn't want any distractions in the 3-way. That's why he doesn't want Roman in the match. And he says,
Foley wants no interference.
And Seth says, I need to talk to Steph. And Foley says, no, she's in Singapore. And Seth says, well, I'm going to take matters into my own hands tonight. Foley says, do not interfere in the main event tonight. And Seth says, what are you going to do, suspend me? And he says...
he interfered and he didn't get suspended.
Oh, we'll get to that. And Seth says, if you continue to support Stephanie, you're just a fool. As far as a top babyface, I don't know about this promo. I don't know.
Yeah, he's top babyface on the pay-per-view, though.
This was exactly what I was worried they were going to do with this guy.
Well.
It's Zayn versus Jericho signed as noted. So, listen, I got to ask the listeners and you, because this is driving me out of my mind. They replayed the Alicia Fox, Nia Jax deal from last week.
Mm-hmm.
Now, am I out of my mind, or did they mirror image this? And if so, why? I am positive that it was the other way around last week, and Nia shoved her into the other wall. I'm positive.
I think you're wrong.
No, it's impossible. If I'm wrong, that'd be fine, but I'm certain she shoved her into the other wall.
I don't remember it that way. I mean, I don't know. I could look it up, but...
All right, if anybody knows...
You should have looked it up before the show, but...
Well, I have to go back and watch last week's show.
I thought that it was the wall on the right side that she was thrown into.
I could have sworn it was the wall on the left side.
You may be right. I don't know. I just how I kind of remembered it, so I don't... But
I honestly don't care if I'm wrong, but what I want to know if I'm right is why.
Yeah, no, I don't know. It wasn't like I was like, taking notes saying which side of the thing it was. And I mean, I was watching both shows and actually paying attention, but I mean, I thought it was the exact same segment. So,
you know what?
What?
You know what? We're both right. I just remembered.
Yes.
Because last week was the show that I was so embarrassed I watched it on my iPad.
Mm-hmm.
And as a way, because WWE takes stuff down on YouTube. And so the people that upload have to find ways to not have the, I guess, computer program or whatever find raw. And so what they had done is they'd reversed it. I remember now. No wonder I thought I was losing my mind.
Okay. So yeah. All right. So yeah. Okay.
All right. That makes sense now. Anyway, so they had Nia versus Alicia. And Nia beat the hell out of her, threw her around, and then speared her through the dasher boards and left her for dead.
Match just ended.
Yeah. Just ended.
Yeah. I mean, it was... The spear through the dasher board always works. I mean, the people pop for it big, and...
they chanted holy shit for a Nia Jax match.
Yeah. So it was something memorable for the end of for the segment. Good for her.
We had the New Day out.
So what's the deal with the frickin' cereal out of the boots? That's really weird.
The New Day comes out, and they're upset that Gallows and Anderson tried to entertain the fans last week. That's our thing, they noted.
I tell you what, I would have been upset too. And they did. I will say this. they did make it very clear that was one of the worst segments. I mean, they didn't even pull any punches.
Dude, they threatened to show the footage, and fans were screaming no and booing, and then they didn't do it.
Yeah, that was awesome, actually.
They said you will never see this footage again.
They said that the segment last week was 5 minutes and 37 seconds.
That's exactly what I wrote. That's impossible. That's even more impossible than that Nia Jax thing that I imagined.
Yeah, because, I mean, I'm sure that's right, but it felt like it was forever.
I think what they meant was the actual skit by Gallows and Anderson was only 5:33, but the whole segment, if you add in New Day coming out and everything else, it was significantly longer.
Okay.
But there's no way from start to finish that whole thing was 5 minutes, 33 seconds.
Man, well, it was 5:37, but man, oh man, was that, like when they said that, it was just like, am I imagining things? Because that thing felt like it never ended.
So, speaking of never ending, we got the match again. Gallows and Anderson against the New Day. They keep mentioning that they've been champions for 386 days, so they're almost certainly going to break Demolition's record in about 3 months here.
Jesus Christ, though. I mean, it's just like Anderson and Gallows, if they're not going to win it this time, it's like ridiculous.
Well, it doesn't look like they're going to.
Well,
they'd heat on Kofi for about 5 straight minutes. He made the tag to Xavier. Xavier runs wild on Anderson, breaks down into a 4-way. And then the heels hit the Magic Killer. Big E standing right there. And he just stands there, and they pin Xavier, so they're getting a championship match at the pay-per-view.
Well, they were already going to get the championship match, but I guess that's, yeah.
A Roman Reigns interview, he vowed to kick Kevin Owens' ass, go to the pay-per-view, and win the title. They announced the Cruiserweights are coming next Monday to Raw, thank God. And then, yes, Jinder Mahal came out. And he said, in my time off, I found peace. Hear thousands of households turning the channel.
Oh, God, could you imagine you're going against the NFL and you bring this thing up in the third hour?
It gets better. Out comes Jack Swagger. There were light USA chants, but other than that, dead silence for this match. And finally, Swagger goes for the Swagger Bomb. Jinder gets the feet up, hits the neck breaker, and gets the pin. I will say at least they're giving him a little bit of credibility before he does jobs again. But this was a segment that did not need to be on this show.
It doesn't matter one way or the other between these two. It doesn't matter who wins and loses. They're both dead, so they're going nowhere. Now, the thing that was interesting is they said that Swagger's contract is expiring soon. And you wouldn't say that unless it's going to mean something.
His Raw contract.
That's what they said. Does that mean they're going to send him to SmackDown? Where he'll be useless on that show, too.
Well, you know that show needs some talent.
Yeah, but not Jack Swagger. They need
Dude, they need something.
They don't need Jack Swagger.
He ain't doing a damn thing on this show.
I guess it doesn't matter. I guess. Maybe they can make him a tag team or something, but I don't know. So, of all the people to send him Cesaro. Don't send him Jack Swagger. I mean.
And then we had Enzo Amore and Epico. The crowd went crazy for Enzo and Cass doing their pre-match deal, and then the bell rang, and they didn't care one bit about Enzo, aside from a light "How you doing" chant at one point.
I have to disagree. They went crazy for the entrance, and they definitely went crazy for the soft deal. But when Enzo did his promo, they were not reacting because I don't think anyone understood what the hell he was saying.
That's par for the course.
Yeah, but usually they react to it. I mean, like this one. I mean, I was listening, going like, okay, it's Enzo babbling on, and he's really charismatic. But they were quiet for him, you know. And then as soon as Cass grabs the mic, they picked up, you know. But that's because they knew exactly what he was going to do, and he did exactly that. So, you know, Enzo's trying, but I guess like when he's saying all that stuff that nobody understands, at some point in some cities, I guess it's not going to work.
God bless this guy. He is so bad in the ring.
Enzo?
Oh, my God.
I've seen a lot worse than him. I saw Punk the other night. I mean...
You're comparing CM Punk's MMA fight to Enzo Amore's professional wrestling?
Yeah, I mean, because one shouldn't have been there, and this one, you know, I guess I could compare Dana Brooke. Dana Brooke was no better than Enzo. She was probably no worse than Enzo tonight, though, I will say that.
There's no way she was worse than Enzo. He was very bad. They did the suplex into the ring. Other dude grabs the guy's foot. He falls down, gets pinned.
Enzo lost again.
That's
he's losing
right.
Every week. Poor guy. Best promo in the company, and he's losing every week. But
hey, at least we'll get a tag team match Between Enzo and Cass and the Shooting Stars.
Shining Stars. Yeah, we'll probably get that added to the pay-per-view. It hasn't been announced, but I would expect that we'll
Maybe
have
they should
that,
call them the Shooting Stars and have them be amateurs. Can't be worse than this.
Shooting Stars instead of Shining Stars. Yeah, but Puerto Rico's the Shining Star of the Caribbean. That's where it comes
My
from.
point is, this gimmick sucks. They're selling timeshares. That's the best they can come up with.
Yes, it's the best they can come up with. Look, they've been around for how many years, and they've never come up with anything good for them. They were freaking matadors from the Puerto Rican matadors, and I don't even think they have bullfighting in Puerto Rico. And when they were Puerto Rican matadors, well, actually they were supposed to be Mexican matadors, but they were wink wink the whole time that who they really are anyway. So, yeah, those guys. I think that their career is destined to go from bad gimmick to bad gimmick.
We had Seth Rollins meeting with Kevin Owens, and Seth is back there. He's supposed to be the top babyface, and says a couple of things, and then Kevin Owens just ruins this guy verbally. He says,
I know.
I don't need luck. He says, you want Roman in the match so Roman can do all the work. You can steal the pin. This is your entire career. Other people doing the work. Triple H had your back more than anybody. Now he has my back. You haven't done a thing since you returned. You got beaten by Ambrose. You got beaten by Finn Balor with one arm. You're a failure. And I'm like, Jesus. He's not wrong about any of this.
Yeah, he goes like, first you let Roman do all the work, then it was Dean Ambrose, then it was Kane, then it was J&J Security. Was there anybody he left out?
Have they succeeded? I guess John Cena. But they are so horrible at trying to book baby faces.
Well, they were here.
Oh my God. Across the board.
Oh yeah, they mentioned Jon Stewart. That was the other one they mentioned who saved him.
My God. It's just incredible. Seth Rollins turns babyface into a top babyface, and he's just, ruining this guy.
I think that they're hedging their bets on Seth. I have no idea why, considering, the state of the babyface side of things, why they would have him be, such a bad, I don't know. I don't know what the whole deal was here, especially when you're doing it against Owens, because when I'm watching him and Owens together, it's to me, Owens is the babyface.
Yeah. That's absolutely correct.
Yeah.
We had Roman versus Kevin Owens. I did some math here. I believe we had 4 total minutes of chin locks during this match.
Wow.
But it was a very, very good match by the end. And tons of heat.
I didn't think that they did 2 matches. I think the first match really wasn't anything special, but the second one was really, the first one, which was a DQ finish, that one, not so much, but once they got into the second one, it was pretty damn great.
They had a DQ when Seth, who had been told not to interfere, ran in, and so Mick Foley comes out, and Seth is on the ramp cackling like a heel, and Mick comes out, and they get this huge argument, and Mick Foley, who told this man, you must not interfere in this match. Mick Foley says, and I quote, now we've got to have a talk. And he takes him to the back to have a talk. Huh.
Well, we don't know where that's going, but he's not getting suspended.
No, they're going to have a talk.
They can't afford that.
So the match continues, turns into a really good match. Roman fires up, avoids a cannonball into the corner, hits a Superman punch. Owen kicks out. This is awesome chance. Owens with 2 cannonballs goes for the power bomb. Roman hits the Gotch lift power bomb for another near fall. And then Rusev runs down. Roman hits him with a Superman punch and then turns around into a pop-up power bomb for the pin. Looked like he hit his head hard on the landing. So he gets pinned. He's out of the match. It's now Owens versus Seth and Rusev versus Roman. And Rusev hits the ring afterwards. Rusev lays out Roman Reigns with a super kick. He puts him in the Accolade, and Roman Reigns has so much sympathy that the fans are cheering for the evil Russian and chanting Rusev's name.
Look, we're so far gone on Roman Reigns, it's ridiculous.
That's a new standard right there.
Oh, my God.
The evil Russian is the babyface beating up Roman Reigns. Who got screwed?
It's been like that for, the better part of a couple of years now. It's just how it's going to be. But it's okay, so that's fine. They've got But when they book the other babyface like Seth and the other top babyface is Roman that no one's going to like, yeah, they sure do a crappy job making babyfaces, don't they?
They do a horrible job.
Yeah.
It's incredible. So I was so happy to see Rhino and Heath Slater actually win the tag team titles. It's a babyface team that actually achieved something. They said they were going to do something, they went through the tournament, and they won. What a novel concept.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but they're not top babyfaces. They're just guys.
Dude, at this point they're going to be because they fuck up every other babyface.
Yes, they're not going to let Heath Slater get past a certain point. Or
Who's
Rhino.
the top babyface on SmackDown? Dolph? Who we've been told repeatedly is a failure, and then he goes out there and fails on every show?
Dean Ambrose and Randy Orton are the top babyfaces, and John Cena when he comes back.
Randy Orton's gone.
Well, he'll be
Cena's
back.
gone.
Cena's coming. Cena should be back this week because he's on the next pay-per-view.
Man. All right, let's do some of these questions. We got a lot of them. This person here says, how do you think Roman or Ryback's career in WWE would have ended if Cena didn't get hurt in 2012 and having Ryback replace him in Hell in a Cell versus CM Punk? Was there any long-term plan for Ryback? Long-term plan?
No, they had no long-term plan, but he would have stayed hotter longer because they wouldn't have put him in a position to lose. But eventually, eventually, I think in the long run it would have ended up the same way it did. But you never know. I mean, everything is luck and timing, and he was. He was really over. There's no doubt he moved numbers, but
hey, he changed his name.
He's trying to change his name.
He's got to go to court.
Yeah, he's trying to change it. Ryback Reeves instead of Ryan Reeves, so he can market stuff with the Ryback name. It's if he can get it done, good for him. I mean, WWE's going to fight that one though, because they from their standpoint, they can't afford to have all these guys like change their names so they can still use the names when they leave WWE. That's going to be. I don't know how it's going to work, but generally speaking, I would suggest that it's going to be tough. Especially if you're going to go on television or something like that with another promotion. The WWE is going to fight that one.
Matthew wants to know, was the fight between Kimo and Bam Bam Bigelow a work or a shoot?
It was a shoot.
Tell everybody the story of this fight.
They brought in Bam Bam Bigelow to fight Kimo on a show in Japan, and Kimo took him down and pounded his eye in, and he gave him a lot worse beating than CM Punk took. And, but yeah, it was one of those things that started where it hurt the Japanese pro wrestling business when stuff like that started happening. And it hurt Bam Bam because Bam Bam was a star in Japan. And once that happened, it's like it really messed with him something fierce as far as his star power went.
Matt here says, are Tiger Mask 3 or 4 considered successful? Tiger Mask and Tiger Mask 2 are pretty legendary, but I don't know anything about 3 or 4.
Well, 4 is still around, and he's just kind of there at this point. I don't know that you would say he was unsuccessful. It's like he's the number 2 veteran junior heavyweight on that roster. He's been there for a long, long time, so I guess moderately successful. I mean, not ultra successful. And 3 was Kanemoto, who was a lot more successful as Kanemoto than he was as Tiger Mask. He just wasn't a good fit for the gimmick because Tiger Mask is supposed to be like a real flyer, and Kanemoto was more of a submission and kicker. So, I wouldn't say Tiger Mask 3 was a success.
Jay here says, all the Punk UFC talk begat a conversation between a friend and I that brought up different info when Googled. Dana White says Kurt Angle failed his physicals to be on Ultimate Fighter 10. Kurt says he passed but needed more prep time. Who is correct?
I don't know the answer to that. I know both stories. And it's between Dana and Kurt, and I'm not the one who's going to make a value judgment between those two. Either one could be correct. I remember when Dana said it. I mean, I was there when Dana said it. And then Kurt, whatever it was the next day or the day, 2 days later, immediately popped back and goes, it's not true. I didn't have the prep time. And he's always stuck to that story that he didn't have the prep time. And it does make sense. I mean, it does make sense that it's possible that's the case.
This person here says, I know the WWE did those combine numbers recently. Got me thinking about those brutal old days of the New Japan and All Japan women's dojos, where I believe they also put their athletes through a series of athletic tests. And I was just wondering if they kept numbers for the athletes. And if they did Dave ever hear about any of them?
Not really, but it wasn't like, I mean, they did do like stuff, but it was a lot more repetition stuff until you drop. So it was like it wasn't like you're benching 225 for reps. It was like you're maybe like if you're a woman, you're maybe like lifting 20 pounds over and over and over and over again for rep after rep after rep after rep. It was far more endurance based than power based in all the cases. I mean, it's like, to do the squats with no weight until essentially you quit, and they just want to see how far you can go. And the ones who don't quit are the ones who are they would take in, or the ones who look good athletically. So.
This person here says there was a recent picture sent out on Twitter by Ring of Honor of Prince Nana and Wade Barrett. Any word on if he might be heading there for a run?
Have not heard. I don't know. I mean, I talked to him. God, it was a ways back now. But we had a conversation about life after wrestling. And I know that he, I mean, I think he was interested in acting, and he was definitely interested in sportscasting. So I don't know if he wants to do pro wrestling, Ring of Honor. Hey, there's not a lot of choices. Ring of Honor would probably be a good fit for him. I mean, the one everybody wants to do now is New Japan. And he would do well in New Japan, I think, too. But, there's just how many spots, how many Americans can New Japan take?
This person here says, is Cyborg being tested under USADA for her upcoming fight for Fight Night? And was she tested back in May for UFC 198?
Oh, yeah, she's been tested. She's been tested many times. So, yep.
Brandon here says, I've occasionally heard about a rule where tag partners can only interfere once to break up a pin in a match. Is this a WWE rule that's part of matches that they don't talk about? Yes, actually it is.
Well, it was. I don't know if it still is, because they changed those kind of things change constantly. But it certainly was, and I haven't heard that it's not.
I haven't seen 2 saves in a match that I can remember.
I know, I haven't either. So who knows? It's weird.
Ricardo here says, with all of the talk about CM Punk's future, did anyone consider the possibility of him doing The Ultimate Fighter? Him on Ultimate Fighter could be the boost that the show needs.
I was actually talking to somebody in UFC this morning about CM Punk doing Ultimate Fighter. So evidently, yeah, it's an idea. Now, whether I don't know though. Is that the right thing? I mean, maybe. I guess. I mean, I just don't know if the idea of him like doing like one fight on Ultimate Fighter and then losing again, is the best use of him. If he's going to lose again, I would rather it be on like a Fox show or something. But even then. It's like I don't know. It's like I mean, there's definitely a benefit in the sense that I think on television, if he's in a television fight, it will draw ratings. Especially at least once it will. I don't know if it will, if he keeps getting beat quickly, that'll burn out pretty quick. But I don't know that they want to put him in there again. They do have a certain standard that they want to keep. As funny as that sounds after watching him, but they really do. And again, they did cut Kimbo, and Kimbo was a big draw when they cut him. And if they are going to cut Punk, and they certainly give me that impression that they will, maybe they'll give him one more fight. I don't know, but if he in one more fight he performs like this, they'll have to cut him, even as a big draw.
This person here says, is any woman that's had a baby fought in the UFC or has taken time off to have a baby and come back? Beck Rollins.
A lot of them have had kids. A lot of them have kids.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think if any, because the women are relatively new. I can't think of anyone on the roster. Maybe there's someone who was actually a fighter in the UFC, then had a baby and then came back. I mean, so, there are definitely women there that fought, had a baby, and then came back to fighting. But I don't know that they've done that in the UFC career. No one comes to mind.
All right, finally here, this person says, in the early days of TNA, Roddy Piper on his debut cut a promo in the ring while wearing a T-shirt with 10 wrestlers on the back who had passed away. One of the names was Rick McGraw. Could Dave talk a little bit about him and the circumstances that led to his death? Was it a big news story at the time?
It wasn't that big a news story. It was around 84, and Rick McGraw was like a underneath guy with a little bit of credibility. And as I recall, Rick McGraw had a television match with Roddy Piper right before he died. Like maybe it aired maybe a week before the death. And Roddy Piper gave him a really bad beating. So it was like this rumor spread that because he gives him this bad beating and then a week later Rick McGraw died, that Roddy Piper beat him to death, which of course, from the injuries in that match, it wasn't that brutal. It wasn't like it was a bloodbath, but it was a pretty one-sided beating in a match, which of course had nothing to do with it. But Rick McGraw had a heart attack. That's what he died from, at around 30-ish. He was a blown up, like really, really roided up guy. And, and I'm not saying he died. The heart attack is from steroids, but, it probably didn't help his cause any, that's for sure.
All right, everybody. On that note, we're going to wrap it up. We've got all sorts of stuff up on the front page today. New back issue of The Observer. A new Observer is going to be out on Wednesday. We got a lot of radio shows, tons of stuff from this past weekend. So check it all out, everybody. We'll talk to you again after a while.